It's a battle of blue bloods in week 2. We got Oklahoma, Michigan. It's Locked On Crossover Edition.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It's a Locked On Crossover Edition, and thank you for making the Locked On Network your first listen every single day. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Just like there's more to every player, more dedication, more attention to detail, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Stay tuned later in the episode for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda Move and Be Moved. We got Isaiah Hull of Locked On Wolverines, Jay Smith of Locked On Sooners, and myself, John Williams of Locked On Sooners. Make sure you subscribe to whichever Locked On show you consume on a daily basis, wherever you get your podcast. Isaiah, we're going to start here because the 5-star true freshman quarterback Bryce Underwood made his first start as a Wolverine last weekend. How did you feel about his performance?
I thought it went kind of as expected, and I think that's one of the things that you just never know with a guy playing his first ever game, right? Like he's had an extremely successful high school career, and everything I'd heard from him, from Connor Stalions being his offensive coordinator to other people who had seen him behind the scenes throughout this whole time that said, like, you don't understand, this kid's special. Connor had told me at one point, like, hey, he's where JJ McCarthy was when I left Michigan halfway through 2023. So that was high praise, but you want to see it, right? And you have to not only see that, but also withstand all of the nerves that come from just changing the crowd size and the stage, and going from having a situation where you're playing in front of maybe 1,000 people to 110,000, from playing where maybe someone's streaming it on some local high school thing, or maybe you're on, local channel 7 or something for their game of the week, to being national on NBC. And I thought he handled it extremely well. He showed a lot of poise. He looked extremely comfortable. There was no point where he looked rattled. I think in the spring game, he looked a little rattled at times, just because, it's his first time handling that. And he never looked like he was out of place, and made all the throws with, whether it was with velocity or touch, accuracy, kind of all the way through, made good decisions. Definitely didn't look like a guy making his first start. I was extremely impressed with what he did. But as I'm sure you guys will talk about with Oklahoma playing Illinois State, you have a little bit of a caveat in level of competition still. So I was impressed. I don't know yet what New Mexico is. They looked well coached, but it is still New Mexico. So obviously a big jump up, not only in competition, but playing against a defensive guru in Brent Venables.
Well, and Jay, we've seen, former 5-star quarterbacks making their first start, and it not necessarily be a smooth transition. See Jackson Arnold and the Oklahoma offense last year versus Temple. So to have Bryce Underwood go and perform well in his first start, that's something to take note of.
Yeah, and the tape that I watched of him, it looked like he was comfortable. He had a couple, freshman, things where it looked like he was kind of rushed or hesitated in a couple of capacities. But for the most part, yeah, he did look like he was seasoned. So Chip Lindsey appears to have put him in a situation where he's very comfortable with his body, and he's comfortable with the offense and going. And so I'm curious about that. Chip Lindsey being the new offensive coordinator, what does that look like there at Michigan?
This is some kind of inside info, and I've kind of hinted at this on Locked On Wolverines, but I've talked to some people who talked about what the atmosphere within Michigan with Kirk Campbell leading the charge. I don't want to denigrate a guy, but at the same time, it sounds to me like, at least from a player's perspective, it was a very hostile, toxic kind of environment, and there was a lot of kind of anger seething behind the scenes with a lot of the players and Kirk Campbell, not to mention the play calling was abysmal. He's a guy that flamed out at Old Dominion, successful as Michigan's quarterbacks coach, but as an offensive coordinator, it never felt like it was really on the up and up. So to bring in Chip Lindsey, a guy that again, from everyone I've talked to, everyone loves that, has a situation where everyone's pulling in the same direction, which wasn't the case last year. So that just already kind of changes the calculus for Michigan, and he's a seasoned play caller. Now, there were some moments in the game that where, they got stuck in the mud, and, I maybe questioned a little bit of the play calling. Obviously, Chip Lindsey he's forgotten more about football than I'll ever know. But, then they got back on track by the end of that second quarter. So I think that's a big net positive, but that's one of the things that can't really go underrated. People don't like to talk about certain things when they look at football. Experience, it gets talked about kind of intermittently, but culture and just everyone pulling in the same direction is one of those things that people just tend to just essentially forget about. But that is why Michigan had a lot of success in 2021, 2022, 2023. Not Connor Stallion sending his mom to the Purdue game. Everyone pulling on the same direction, which wasn't the case for a lot of years. That plays a big factor. And I think with Chip Lindsey, that's where you can see, like, okay, everyone is on, they know what they need to do. They want to do what they need to do. And I think, like, that's like kind of emblematic when you see Bryce throw a block, like that's the Michigan culture kind of taking over. So I think that in and of itself pays a lot of dividends.
Yeah, cohesion is a really underrated aspect of football in general because you have to have everybody on the same page. There's too many moving parts for one guy to not be doing what everybody else is expecting him to do. And I think that's why so many people are optimistic about Oklahoma and their offense and John Mateer, who made his debut with the Sooners this past Saturday, right, Jay?
Yeah, the first game in Oklahoma, he's from Little Elm, Texas, so this is more so up the street around the corner in comparison to going cross country at Washington State. So more family could be in attendance and all of that. Plus, him following his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, it kind of gives him a leg up because he's been in that system for at least, 2 years with, having, this is his third season in it because his first year out of Washington State, they had a different offensive coordinator, but he was able to learn from the tutelage of a Cam Ward who, transferred out, went to Miami, got drafted number 1 in the NFL draft. So a very good person to kind of learn behind and see, but I think my biggest question is going to be, and we could talk about this in the keys to the game next segment, is really what Michigan's going to do about him being that big of a dual threat, because that's what he was at Washington State. For the Michigan fans that don't know, when they played against Washington in that Apple Cup, which, that's a opponent for you all in the Big Ten, he was just doing everything, not only throwing it, but he was running it. So he was creating a massive problem and putting a lot of strain on Washington to try to keep up with what he was trying to do out there on the field. And I think Oklahoma, for us, seeing him be able to just sit in the pocket, feel comfortable and throw it, just like you said, Isaiah, the opponent is one to keep in consideration, but it's also the first game. So you kind of got that initial glimpse of, oh, okay, he will be patient in the pocket. He will go ahead and throw it. I mean, this is the first time we've had a quarterback that kind of showed patience in a few years since Dylan Gabriel was here, because last season there was not that much comfort when it came to just sitting there and launching it around the field and, getting acclimated with new wide receivers. So I'd say Ben Arbuckle has put together something that's going to be fun. So even from there with Michigan, I know that you all are a very power run type team, and bringing in a running back like Justin Haynes from Alabama, how did that feel bringing him in to try to, get close to duplicating the great run game y'all had over the last couple of years?
I mean, I think it obviously went well. He had I can't remember what exact stat line, something like 16 carries for 169 yards and 3 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was the type of performance that Michigan fans are accustomed to seeing. Maybe it's not quite the same as the as like Blake Corum 2022, where he's just not only rattling off those big ones, but it just felt like you gave him the ball, he was going to get 4 or 5 yards every time. If they'd run Blake Corum on 3rd and 6 and he'd get 9, I don't know if we're there yet as far as that's concerned. And it has just as much to do with the offensive line. Everything I heard coming out of camp was from like behind the scenes was they were maybe a little bit better at run blocking than pass blocking, but I didn't necessarily feel like that was the case in the game. So I'm going to be curious to see, especially with this particular defense that they're going to be going up against, how they're going to be able to do that. Jordan Marshall, I want to see more out of him because they want to have the 1-2 punch. like they've always had with whether it was Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards last year, Kalel Mullings and Donovan Edwards. So I'm curious to see if that's going to be able to continue. I'm just generally offensively, for the most part, kind of in wait and see mode, and not to jump ahead, but just with the way the defense played against New Mexico, even though a lot of it was sudden change, I'm also kind of in wait and see there, because we've seen in the last calendar year, Michigan kind of struggle to find its footing in the early going. So, the run game's part of that to me. So I think that that'll be interesting just to kind of see, are they able to continue to do, especially given what, Oklahoma didn't exactly stop the run against Illinois State. So like, is that strength against weakness there? On the other side, like Michigan struggled to stop the pass against, and a lot of the misdirection and different things, delayed tight end screens, tunnel screens, some throws in the flat. Is that another weakness against weakness scenario? Or strength against weakness scenario. I don't know. So we'll just have to find out which one ends up winning out.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of taking a wait and see because they saw this game on the schedule and are really excited to see these two teams match up with one another. We're going to continue to talk Oklahoma, Michigan, get into some trench discussion for all the old school football fans. This is going to be a slobber knocker coming up on a Locked On Crossover edition. Jay Smith, John Williams here of Locked On Sooners, Isaiah Hole of Locked On Wolverines, and we're talking Oklahoma, Michigan ahead of this big-time top 25 blue blood matchup in Norman Saturday night. ESPN College Game Day is going to be there. It's going to be a battle in the trenches. I think nobody is under any false pretense this is going to be a spread them out and sling it kind of a game. Whoever wins up front is going to have the better shot at winning this game. So, Jay, Isaiah kind of touched on Oklahoma not really stopping the run well against Illinois State. They struggled a little bit, gave a few gashes. What's your expectation for Oklahoma this week against Michigan?
I think it's going to be a completely different game plan. It felt like in this game, the goal was to burn as much clock as possible. And so in the beginning, you saw a lot of younger players or newer players playing on the roster and trying to figure out their gaps and filling up those run lanes. And they weren't really as effective as they should have been. But then you saw as the game went on, they started to lock down. I think Oklahoma got gashed for basically 2 or 3 bigger plays, like the quarterback scramble or whatnot. And that was 100% placement. That was a new edge that it came in, and you could see that he was chasing the running back instead of going for the quarterback like he probably should have. That read option can get you if you're not prepared for it. But at the same time, that was a veteran player. I'm not going to say the name. You can go back and watch the game if you like. But it's a veteran that just transferred in. And so for them, it's just figuring out, okay, go for the quarterback, let your other linebackers take care of the running back like they always do. And from there, I feel like that's when you're going to see Oklahoma actually shift their game plan. I know the whole purpose and the whole plan that Brent Venables is going to have. He's going to put as much pressure as possible on Bryce Underwood. He's going to make him beat him with his arm. And with the way that Oklahoma's secondary has been revamped, which looks like it's a lot better than we've had over the last couple of years, I expect them to make him throw, just stuff the run as much as possible with those big defensive linemen that we have. And hopefully, see a W from there.
Do you think Michigan, Isaiah, is going to be in a situation where they can stop what a lot of people believe to be one of the best defensive fronts in college football?
That kind of remains to be seen to me, right? Like, I think the good news for Michigan in the front is that even though it wasn't necessarily the most stellar showing, I mean, I don't think it was a bad showing, but it wasn't one of those things where you say like, okay, now you're going to be able to go and handle Oklahoma. Is that these are guys who are a lot more experienced now, and they've spent the entire fall camp going up against a Wink Martindale defense. And I think that will help them, because the strength of Michigan's team is that front seven. And you could kind of see it, even if there was 3 sacks in the game against New Mexico, but that doesn't really tell you the whole story, because those 3 sacks did come late. And that would maybe lead you to believe like, okay, well, they weren't able to get pressure. No, Michigan was able to get pressure so much that like New Mexico had to basically do 1-step drops and get rid of the ball, or completely roll out the pocket to one side. And use a lot of misdirection, and Jack Lane got hit time and time again, regardless. So I think that because that they've had that experience of going up against the Wink Martindale defense and that front, and just like the relentless rotation, because they've got 10 guys. I mean, maybe you could even say like 11, 12 guys that ended up being in there, because there were a couple that really kind of surprised, like freshman Nate Marshall. I think that gives Michigan at least a little bit of confidence that it can go in and do what it feels like it needs to do. Not to mention, these are the same guys that went up against what last year at least was a good Alabama team last year, and Ohio State. And yeah, there's a couple guys that aren't there that played against Ohio State, but they did play against, for the most part, these guys played against Alabama, and they were able to handle business. So to me, that's like one of those things where Michigan should feel good, even if like what we saw in week 1 maybe wasn't quite what you hope to see in just kind of in the aggregate.
Yeah, I think it's hard to make these big sweeping assessments of a team in week 1 against a much inferior competition sometimes, because you don't know the ins and outs of what the coaching staff is trying to get accomplished and what they're wanting to do. You just go get the dub and you leave and start preparing for the blue blood matchup the next week. What can Oklahoma fans expect from a Wink Martindale defense, Isaiah?
It's one where you kind of, like, you always hear about like disguises, and you're not really sure what you're looking at. That's what is going to be happening a lot is, and I'm sure that's going to be the same on the other end, but it's a lot of, because remember, he's an NFL guy. He was the architect of the defense that Michigan's been running well before he arrived in Ann Arbor. He, ran it with the Baltimore Ravens for quite some time. And for back when Michigan got Mike McDonald in 2021, Wink Martindale was considered to be the top defensive coordinator in all of the NFL. So it's an NFL defense. And last year there were some issues with it because he kind of came in thinking he had NFL personnel, and eventually he kind of realized, no, I've got college guys, and then I can build upon that instead of being like, here's what it is, do it like his predecessors did. We can build on it. And by the end of the year, it was great. And thankfully for him this year, he's working with most of the same cast of characters that he was working with last year. The defensive line in particular, I know everyone looks at Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant and says, how can you do it without those guys? Well, Trey Pierce and Rayshon Benny were the 2 starters against Alabama, and they had no problem getting pressure up the middle. So there's going to be a lot of relentlessness up front, a lot of disguises in the back, and you don't necessarily know what you're going to get. You can't sit there and look at it and say, well, it's a 3-4 or if it's a 4-3. There were a lot of times in this game last week where they had 5 down linemen, and I didn't see that at all last year, right? They often play with 2 linebackers. There's times they're going to play with 3. They're going to have a nickel out there quite often. It's just always going to vary, and they're always going to consistently mess with the quarterback's eyes. And I think one of the biggest keys in this game is the fact that John Mateer, in his career to this point, has never seen a defense of this style nor of this caliber. Now, obviously, Michigan has to also execute, which I felt like it didn't do all the time last week. But that's I think a really big thing. I mean, the same thing can be said for Bryce Underwood, but that's going to be really interesting to see how much does he kind of mess with John Mateer's mind the same way that Brent Venables is going to mess with Bryce Underwood's.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's exactly what I was thinking in that one, is that Brent Venables and Wink Martindale are similar in that capacity. They like to bring something up front, roughly around 15 seconds left on the play clock. They change the entire look. So they want the quarterback to have to think about 2 or 3 different things before they can snap the ball. And so, yeah, Brent Venables is going to bring a similar setup, because that's what he did at Clemson. That's how those defenses were so good, and they caused so many problems for Alabama in those national championship games, was they kept switching things up and like I said, messing with the quarterback's eyes. And I know that's what Brent Venables is going to do, especially to a true freshman. He wants him to overthink way more than he wants to. And just like Michigan, that's kind of the one big benefit for Oklahoma and John Mateer is he's going against a coach since the spring that does the exact same type of setup, similar to Wink Martindale is really making your quarterback have to make those adjustments. Same thing with our defensive front. So you're going to see, I mean, I think I saw a couple of 4.6s from us that we didn't really do much last year. Those bear fronts, I've even seen them go with, I think it was like 6 DBs, like 3 safeties set up at some point. So I know that similarly for Michigan, for Oklahoma fans, Michigan fans, that's what some of the things you'll see with Oklahoma is a ton of shifting and changing when it comes to how they bring players out. They'll be rotating probably too deep in not only the defensive line, but also in the linebacker room, and letting a lot of the corners and safeties kind of, stick most of the time out there. But just like Michigan, this is what's going to be the funnest part about this game is I want to see which defense really executes and causes the most havoc for the other team's offense. That's probably the most important thing in this game, regardless, because both teams are really known for them having strong defenses.
We're going to get into some final thoughts for Oklahoma, Michigan coming up next here on a Locked On Crossover Edition. All right, guys, we're just a few days away now from what is going to be one of the best college football games in the 2025 season. It may not be this high-scoring affair that some people like to see, but I think it's going to be one that the college football purist is going to love, where you're going to see some good time defense. I don't know where that's coming from. Some good time defense, and also some really intriguing quarterbacks, because Bryce Underwood is a very talented kid with big time potential. John Mateer is obviously very talented, also has big time potential. So Isaiah, as you look at this game, just kind of your big, key to the game for Michigan to go win it.
I think being able to set the pace on the ground and to be able to basically, even with Chip Lindsey being a new offensive coordinator, getting back to the typical Michigan style of things, which is, as Joel Klatt often called it, the boa constrictor, right? It's this idea that we're going to run the football and burn up so much clock, and our defense is going to get you off the field long enough that you're going to be really scraping and struggling to get those points while Michigan just slowly pulls away. I don't know that is how the game's going to go, but that's I think going to be the game plan to kind of get back to that, because I think this is the type of thing where, they wanted to really showcase Bryce Underwood in week 1, get him comfortable so that he can go into this game and feel like I can do it, right? You didn't want to give him 12 passes against New Mexico and say, I'm sorry, my phone's going off there. But what you really wanted was to be like, okay, you get comfortable now because we're going to want to run the football. But because if they can stop the run, then we need to be able to we need to be able to rely on you in those moments. So I think that Michigan's probably going to try to get back to its ethos in that light. As far as how the game goes, man, I can really tell you I have no idea. Like today, I would probably say Oklahoma by like 3-7, but tomorrow I'll probably be like Michigan by 3-7, right? Like it's hard to really try to figure out, considering all of the question marks with this team. Neither quarterback having seen a defense like they're about to see. John Mateer has a lot more experience, but against who, I think, is kind of the question that I have. If Michigan's run is stopped, are they going to be able to really truly rely on Bryce? Is the defense going to look more like it did against Ohio State and Alabama last year, or is it going to look like it did against Texas last year? Those are a lot of really difficult questions to answer, and I'm so excited to see what it's going to look like.
Jay, what about you? What do you think the key is for Oklahoma going into this one?
Yeah, I'm in a similar mindset as Isaiah. The thing is, we want to see what these teams are going to look like against, real competition, real defensive coordinators. But I give the slight advantage to John, mainly because he's got 3 years of experience. He sat and watched in the Pac-12 when they had some really strong defenses, and learned behind Cam Ward. And then last year, what he did against Washington, who was they went to a bowl game. They were solid. He was able to go out there and make the adjustments and get some and gash them a little bit. And I think that that's what kind of helps Ben Arbuckle, is that he can architect the offense for a guy that he knows very well. And that's really going to be the biggest challenge for him. Is now he's going up against Wink Martindale's. I got it right this time, so my apologies. It's so early in the morning. We're all trying to figure out how to be coherent, but he's going up against Wink Martindale defense, but as you said, Isaiah, both defensive coordinators have given both these quarterbacks some problems in camp. They made them have to work for it and understand, hey, these are the type of things you're probably going to see a lot this season. But I think that with Brent Venables going up against a true freshman, the question is going to be if Oklahoma can slow down the Michigan run game and force Bryce to do just about everything, I think they have a better shot. So I'm kind of in your same boat. I'm thinking 3-7 Oklahoma right now. We'll see what the health looks like on both teams as we get closer to the actual game. But I'm still going to stick to Oklahoma mainly because it's at home. You got a true freshman on the road, getting acclimated to a new environment. I mean, it's going to be over 80, probably 86 plus thousand fans screaming. So it's going to be his first time under some of the big lights of understanding, okay, I'm on the road, national television, game day is going to be in town. Everybody's going to be watching me. I'm just happy that Oklahoma got him early because I think that if it was like November, I'd have a lot more questions about if, depending on what Oklahoma looks like and Michigan looks like, I'd probably have a lot more questions going into that game if it was later in the season, because then at that point, he's been forged in fire at that point. And if he has come out strong, then it'd be like, all right, we got a problem. We got to prepare ourselves for a dude that has adjusted his game specifically for throughout this entire season.
Yeah, I just don't think Oklahoma wants to let Michigan's offense get in any kind of rhythm, whether it's Bryce Underwood, rolling out of the pocket or the run game getting going, because that's the easiest way to take the air out of the stadium is if Michigan can go on these 10, 12, 14 play drives and just chew up the clock. That'll just be kind of deflating, for a crowd that's going to be really, really energized. It's going to be really key for Oklahoma to stop the run and then contain Bryce Underwood, because they're going to want to get him outside the pocket. They're going to use that athleticism, whether it's on a rollout to pass or in the read option game. And he's a talented player, man. He's going to make some plays. It's a matter of don't let him stack plays one on top of another and get that confidence. They got to kind of hit that confidence early. But I'm with you guys, man. I think it's going to be a really, really tight ball game because both these defenses are going to play really good ball. Isaiah, any parting thoughts here before we get out of here on a Locked On crossover edition?
Yeah, I'm just excited. You brought them up pre-show. I'm excited to see how Michigan adjusts. They feel like with the linebacker core, they've got 4 guys that are all starting caliber, but not having Jayshon Barham, who was just shot out of a cannon last week, is finally really starting to, look like what they thought they were getting coming from Maryland, and he's going to be out for that first half, thanks to apparently you can't tackle in college football anymore. So. That'll be interesting to see what happens as far as Jimmy Rolder and Cole Sullivan filling in for him. But, man, I just can't be more excited for this game. It's going to be so cool. And I can't wait to get to Oklahoma. It's a place that I've wanted to go for basically my entire college football fandom. So to get this opportunity is so exciting. And I know Michigan fans are excited to get down there too.
Jay, final thoughts.
Yeah, I'm excited as well for Michigan to come to town. First time coming in. And it's funny because as I say that, I know a lot of Michigan people that live here in Oklahoma, because we got to remember that GM had a plant here in Oklahoma City. So there was a lot of travel back and forth between Detroit and Oklahoma City back in the day. I mean, there used to be direct flights back and forth a lot back when I was younger or whatnot. So I'm pretty stoked about that. I've got a couple of Michigan friends that have already hit me up and have started the trash talk, which I really appreciate, especially when it's respectful, because we both understand these two blue bloods are trying to get themselves reestablished as maintaining greatness on a regular basis. Michigan coming off a recent national championship. Congratulations on that. That's why Isaiah is a legend here on the show, because he gets to hold up that ring and that banner and talk about it. So I'm ready to see these defenses, because I know that this is what both teams really want to harp on. So I'm pretty stoked that it's going to happen. And I hate that, the linebacker got upheld on that suspension. It was ridiculous. That was not a target. So Michigan fans, don't yell at me when it comes to that, because it was not targeting. That was
Listen,
textbook.
You're already in good company because you're not an Ohio State person. So they're already going to like you already, because if you're Ohio State, it's a little different. But
yeah, we planted the flag when we were there. So that was always a feel good moment for us Sooner fans. So, but yeah, can't wait. It's going to be a great game. Let's make something happen.
It's kind of funny how our rivals played each other week one. That I don't know. It's just kind of weird symmetry that our rivals played each other week one. We're playing week two, and I don't know. Maybe the winner of each game should go play the other winner in week three and just have a little rivalry tournament. I don't know. Just playing. Anyway, that's going to do it for a Locked On crossover edition. Make sure you go subscribe to Locked On Wolverines or Locked On Sooners wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day, and make sure you go check out the Locked On College Football Show, Locked On Big Ten, or Locked On SEC for your second listen of the day. For Isaiah Hole, for Jay Smith, I'm John Williams. Hope you enjoy your week and enjoy another fabulous football weekend this weekend.